All right, so we're going to look at section 3 of this chapter. Remember, we just looked at the characteristics of nonverbal communication, and I'm thinking primarily about the one that says nonverbal communication is ambiguous. We don't always know what people mean by what they're doing. But what we're going to look at now are the functions of nonverbal communication, which is like, why do we do the things we do in nonverbal communication? And let me minimize this. Oh, okay. So I'm not constantly seeing what the time is, although that might be a good idea. Okay. Basically, the first function is we use nonverbal communication both to create and to maintain relationships. So at the very beginning of a relationship, how, I guess, would be, how do we use nonverbal communication? So as they say, we don't go up to people and say, "Hi, I'm friendly, outgoing, in the life of a party." It's our behaviors that subtly cue other people into this. Or we don't say, "You look interesting and I'd like to get to know you, but I'm not sure I should in case you're not interested in me." So there are various ways that we can indicate that. And in class, we're going to channel our inner actor, and we're going to do some of these. In ongoing relationships, nonverbal behaviors can let us know what's going on with people. You see people, holding hands or sitting close. I thought this was really interesting. Kisses delivered with a rightward head turn generally signal romance, while leftward kisses are typical of non-romantic relationships. So next, if you happen to be from a family who does kisses, to see if that plays out. Also, I liked this. Supervisors who offer nonverbal cues of liking can increase subordinates' job motivation, job satisfaction, and affinity for their boss. So that's really interesting. So one of the options that you have for the essay for this class is to do an observation of nonverbal communication. And one of the aspects that you can be focusing on is trying to figure out how people feel about each other based on how they are interacting with each other, based on the nonverbal communications, if I can make that plural, that you see. Okay, let's look at the second one. Second one is regulating interactions. There are various cues that help us know when it's my turn to speak or when I want you to speak. For example, in the classroom, I'll ask you a question, and when I'm done, I might raise my eyebrows because that's about the only part of my face that you could see. And someone would raise their hand and they would say something. And if I think they haven't said enough, there are various gestures that I can do. I do where I kind of pull my hands apart, like, okay, lengthen it. If I want someone to go on, I can make that gesture with my hand. If I think someone's been talking too long, I do that kind of hand over hand, which is like, wrap it up now. Okay. But very interestingly, and I used to talk about this in public speaking, there are cues that let us know that a speaker is done talking. It's not uncommon in a speech for a new speaker to end the speech with, "Well, that's all I've got," or something like that. But instead, what tends to happen is there's a change in intonation where your intonation will fall at the end. And the most important lesson for people to learn is only you can prevent forest fires. See how my voice kind of went down a little bit at the end. We can lengthen the last one. Only you can prevent forest fires. Well, that's kind of weird. That one didn't work as well. Or a drop in vocal pitch or loudness. So all of a sudden you're just a little quieter. So they're very subtle cues that probably you would not be able to sit down and say, "Oh yes, people do this, this, and this." But if you actually we're paying attention to someone, and listen to a couple speeches, how do we know that somebody is done? Just listen to the last couple of lines in a speech and see what has happened. And this is the, remember from that first or second slide, it's nonverbal, but it's vocal because people are using their voice. We also can use eye contact. For example, I'm speaking. The person listening typically looks more at the speaker than the speaker looks at the people listening. And I'm speaking, and I want to signal that I want you to respond. I'll look at you more intently. Okay. Looking at your watch signals to people that maybe they need to leave. I thought this cartoon was very funny because we don't say this, right? But the woman is saying, I can't believe it's already time for you guys to pick up on social cues that we'd like you to leave. How do we let people know that it's time to go home? Because we don't say, by the way, it's time to go home. So think about all the things that you do to let people know it's your turn to talk, or you need to leave, or I've got to go. Okay. And sometimes we say them, but sometimes we indicate it non-verbally. Number 3 is influencing others. This is the one I think that most of us think about, that we use various non-verbal behaviors to get somebody's attention, to show somebody that we like them, or to show someone that we want them to like us, to generate power is a way that, how, if you're in a situation and you want to indicate that you have power, what do? I mean, sometimes people stand up. If you're all sitting down and you stand up, all of a sudden you're bigger than everybody. So you're trying to claim some power there. You can also boost your credibility. Let people know that you know what you're talking about. There are various gestures that you might use. Okay. There's a concept called nonverbal immediacy, which is letting people know that we like them. Smiles, for example. There is an assessment on page 189 that there's only 12 questions that assesses your nonverbal immediacy behaviors. And that would be interesting to look at, especially if you are looking for a job, because these are the things, if you go to a job coach, they will tell you about these things. All right, number 4, I think is really interesting. We have known for years, people, but especially social scientists have known that nonverbal behavior reflects how we feel. But only fairly recently have people begun to realize that nonverbal behavior can also affect the way we feel. Amy Cuddy, social scientist, has a very interesting TED Talk, which is in the folder, and you should watch it. She talks about this much more in more detail and with more passion than I can talk about it. But the idea, I'll just give you a little preview of this. She talks about it when our posture is expansive, our arms are out, or maybe your hands are on your hip, your legs are spread apart a little bit. They call that the Wonder Woman pose. These are poses where we take up space, which is a way of gaining some power. And it influences how we feel about ourselves. So I had talked about this in public speaking a couple of years ago, and I had a woman, her speech was coming up. So she knew that she was going to be next, so she excused herself and she left the room, and she stood in the hallway outside the classroom doing this power posing to help her by non-verbally saying, I have power. She started to feel it a little bit. She said it worked. Okay. So basically what's happening is, even though you would You would say that you don't feel this way. You're doing what Amy Cuddy calls the fake it till you make it. The last, nope, sorry, there's number 5 has to do with either deceiving people or concealing information. There's all kinds of numbers, but a lot of the messages that we deliver are not completely truthful. I would say they're not outright lies, but sometimes we shade the truth a little bit. There are people who maintain that they can tell when people are lying or telling the truth. My sister says she can, but because liars generally have more speech disturbances, they pause longer, their pupils are dilated, they do tiny things called micro expressions, which are very small and last a very short time, but that indicate how they truly feel. There's a video clip from a TV show that was on several years ago called Lie to Me, and it's based on, and I just went blank on the man's name, it's based on someone who's done a lot of work with this. And basically what he would do is he would videotape, well, I guess we don't say that anymore. He would record people and then he would play back what they said. And he and the people he worked with would very carefully focus on the tiny little things that people were doing. And he has incredible, Cal Leitner. No, was that his name in the show? He was very accurate. Most of us are not recording people and analyzing their tiny little micro expressions. So people are it's about 50-50 if we can tell if someone's lying or not. So don't jump to conclusions because someone is acting nervous, so they must be lying, or because someone isn't acting nervous, they must be lying. It's a little hard to do perception checking about honesty or lying, but just realize that people do use nonverbals to conceal a message, but don't base a lot of your interactions on other people with this because you have about a 50% chance of being wrong. Okay. Last of all, number 6 is we use nonverbal communication to manage impressions. And I think this really ties back to influencing others. Okay? Because we want people to think of in a certain way. So, how do we do this? There are three different aspects that we can manipulate to create impressions and to manage impressions. The first one is manner, the way we act, the way you stand, the way you move. I know my father taught us all to, give a firm handshake. And, when you're talking to someone, stand up straight and look them in the eye. That's manner. Okay. Now, what if instead of wanting to appear confident and in control, I want to appear relaxed? Well, I might not stand up ramrod straight. I might sit on the table in the front of the room. I used to sit on the desk when the desk was more in the middle of the room. Okay. A big one is appearance, the way we dress. Do we have a belt? Do we have a handkerchief in the suit pocket? How we do our hair, if our hair is green or if it's our natural brown. Do we use makeup? What kind of perfume? So again, if you think about this in terms of the job interview, how would you dress if you were interviewing at a Fortune 500 company? How would you dress if you were interviewing for a position at a daycare center? How would you dress if you were applying for a position at a company that does lawn care, right? And why would you dress that way? Because you are non-verbally saying to the person who's hiring you, I am the right person for the job. And see, I know how to dress. The last one is setting. And the setting is the physical items that we surround ourselves with. I would encourage you to go visit some of your professors. If they are full-time professors, they have an office on campus. See what their office is like. You have some people whose offices are incredibly neat and sometimes with absolutely you see no personality at all. I have a colleague, I will not mention this person's name, who I believe decorates with piles of paper. Um, Another way to think about, or another aspect of setting, is in the time of the pandemic, when we've done so many meetings and classes virtually. If you happen to have an Elron class, a live remote, what was the background of the professor? So I was at a meeting recently, and these were all college professionals, and the person running the meeting was obviously running the meeting from her bedroom, and we could see her bed with the lacy pillow, and I try not to be judgmental, but I just felt that was not appropriate. So when I've done it, I'm lucky. I have an office. It's my daughter's old bedroom, and behind me I've got a row of books, so I can let people know that, see, I am intelligent, I am well read. And then I have some plants, which says, see, living things are good. And I also have I'm into miniatures, and so I have this miniature craft room that I made out of a box to say, see, I'm creative and fun. So some people have opted to blur their background. Some people are using some of the backgrounds that exist, because where you are tells people things about you. Okay, there's something in the textbook that talks about eyeglasses. And I had never thought about that, but I need new eyeglasses, and I'm going to need to hire an eyeglass consultant who can take me through, if this is what the message you want. If you want people to think that you are blank, here are the glasses that you should buy. Okay, so those are the different ways those are the different functions of nonverbal communication. Do you know what all 6 of them are? Can you give an example of each of these functions? Remember, in your essay, whether it was the observation or the experiment, you are going to have, when you see certain kinds of nonverbal communication, I'm going to ask you to analyze, well, what was the function of the kind of nonverbal communication that you saw? Okay, and a little break, and then we'll get on to the next one.